Do you get sad when Sunday comes around and you realize that the weekend is over? If you are the kind of a person who hates Monday, then this conversation is for you. And today you're going to see how there is something that is so important that will make a fundamental difference to your professional future. It is the difference between being an eagle or a chicken when it comes to following your career. What is this difference between being an eagle or a chicken? I've already used this analogy before in some of our Arata Academy materials. Both are birds. They look more or less the same. They have wings, they have beaks, they have feathers. But the difference between them is enormous. First, you can see that there is a lot of chicken. Everywhere you go, there is some chicken around. Have you ever seen an eagle near you? Probably not. Chickens are everywhere, but eagles are rare. Eagles fly high to hunt at the top of a mountain. Chickens are eating scraps of food in the yard. Eagles are strong and powerful, while chickens have been domesticated and they're weaker and more fearful. You could make thousands of different comparisons, but I think you probably already understood what is the moral of this story. And what I find interesting about this analogy is that each one of us can choose which one of these two birds best symbolizes the choices in our professional environment, because in every single day we have choices and we can choose to be either like an eagle or a chicken. Sometimes we find ourselves forced into acting like a chicken. We feel as if we have to conform and behave just like our co-workers. We should not stand out from the crowd. We have to conform to mediocrity. In this analogy, the act of conformism to social pressure is being symbolized by the chicken. But maybe deep inside, you feel some non-conformity. Maybe you have the spirit of an eagle who finally wants to break free and soar high above everyone else. The main message I'm trying to put across is that we always have the power to choose our behavior. You can be an eagle, you can fly high, you can become rare and admired, become a valued professional. Or you can behave like a chicken. You can and you should develop your career faster than everyone else. Whenever the culture of mediocrity tries to hold you back, you can always choose to fly higher. It is very common for people to strive to grow within a company, but not coming across the results that they really want. If they get lucky, they might get a small bonus at the end of the year, and symbolically this is the crumb that is thrown at the chicken to keep it in the yard. Well, I think this is not what you really want, because your potential is greater than this, and you can fly higher. And in order to do that, you have to understand that the economic model today is very different to how it used to be 1 decade, 2 decades ago. It is important to understand the change in the economic model, because there is still a handful of companies that haven't adapted yet. Because of this, these companies still treat their employees like factory workers in the days of the Industrial Revolution. What was the factory like at the time? It was just spinning bolts and pushing buttons and moving cranks. You didn't even have to think too much. Well, you had an accident at the factory, did you break your arm? Off you go. I'm going to hire another employee who's going to be pushing buttons just like you, because everyone is replaceable. And if you are easily replaceable, you don't get the chance of getting a salary increase. Chickens don't get salary increases. Take a minute to put yourself in the shoes of your employer. You have a lot of workers and everyone behaves like chicken. No one stands out from the crowd. There are more employees than you can imagine. There are many people around in the job market waiting to be hired. What would you do if any of your employees came to you and asked for a raise? Well, if they're no different than anyone else that worked for you, there is no reason for you to give them a significant salary increase. Even if they threaten to resign if you don't give them a raise, you don't have to worry, because you know that there are dozens of equal qualified workers available in the market. So, if it is too easy to replace you, you have little chance of being well paid. Since there is a large number of chickens, well, they are replaceable. Now, think about the factories nowadays. Almost everything is done either by robots or by cheap labor. Those who manage to survive, they have to be very competitive. This holds true for both employees and also for companies. How companies can become competitive? They need to adopt a model in which the individual's performance makes a big difference. That is why today successful professionals behave like true entrepreneurs. Even if you are an employee, act like an entrepreneur. If your goal is to fly higher, you need to go beyond what is expected of you. To be a pro contender and earn higher salaries, you need to behave like an entrepreneur within the organization in which you work and try to put yourself again in the place of your employer. Imagine you have an employee, special one, who really thinks and behaves like the owner of the company. They manage to implement a series of improvements, and these improvements ultimately increase the company's profits by 1 million per year. What would you be doing to keep that employee working with you for your company? How would you react if that employee would ask you for a raise? This entrepreneurial employee is much more valuable to the company. They are rarer to find. Therefore, they have a better chance of thriving inside of the company. And after all, the company also understands they are contributing a huge value to it. In order to achieve this entrepreneurial behavior, to become a rare eagle that can fly high, we have to seek continuous improvement. Continuous improvement. That means strengthening ourselves, discovering our strengths, discovering also our weaknesses. And when we have that knowledge, we can use it to our advantage by adjusting and improving our performance. We can then focus on strengthening our worth as an employee. We can acquire more experiences, we can strengthen our relationships, we can make all the improvements that are necessary to increase our market value. But how do you know if you are an entrepreneur? To find out, we're going now to take a look at 4 types of employees. 4 types of employees. The concept of the 4 types of employees divides workers into 4 different categories. There are the pawns, the rebels, the intrapreneur, and the entrepreneur. Try to see which profile you relate more to. The pawn. The pawn is the stereotypical perfect employee. The person who's always punctual, who values stability and security. All the type of worries that they have is, what is my boss going to think about this? Are they going to get mad? Are they going to like my work? And with all due respect, the pawn doesn't add much value to the company. If you can be easily replaced, you're essentially just a pawn. If your boss can hire someone else, just give them a little bit of training and that person is qualified to do the job, that means you are easily replaceable. Some people might argue that, nobody can ever be irreplaceable, but that's a whole different discussion for another moment. The problem here is being easily replaceable. This represents a big risk of you being fired at any time or never getting any significant higher salary. If you do an analysis of your professional profile, and if you realize that you can be replaced at any time, what can you do? The first step is to identify what motivates you. If you want to do well, stand out, to become an eagle, you really have to like what you do. Now, if you're the type of person who feels sad on a Sunday because your weekend is over, please take a look at lessons number 1 and 2 in our Double Your Salary course, where you can carry out the activities that will help you to find true interest in becoming a really good professional in the right environment. If you are a pawn, then you need to make sure that you don't get stuck in a role that you don't like for the rest of your life. Then you're not going to progress in your career. You cannot increase your salary. You're going to be living in constant fear of being fired, of being stuck. And this is one of the worst feelings in the world. You go to work every day, afraid of losing your job, but at the same time you don't like your job. You're afraid of not being able to pay your bills, to provide for your family. Now, we're going to move to the second type of employee. Let's now talk about the rebel. The rebel. This profile of the rebel, as the name says, is a little bit of a complicated one. It's the professional who tries to innovate and contribute with ideas. However, the rebel is not properly heard. Even if their colleagues don't think the idea is good, The rebel goes ahead and does it anyway. They think that, things have to be their own way. This personality profile is already a certain level above of the pawn. The pawn is basically just a yes man. They just stay quiet, they try to not be noticed, they just do the bare minimum not to be fired. However, the rebel often ends up being misunderstood for not knowing exactly how to properly communicate with the team. The result of the imposition of ideas and bad communication is usually tension and friction and even some fights within the team. That is why the rebels tend to sometimes feel isolated by their co-workers. On the one hand, the pawn has no future because they are apathetic, they're replaceable easily at any time, but on the other hand, the rebel does not have a very good future because they are a little bit clueless. Now, what can we do in this case? If you identify yourself with the profile of the rebel, you have to do the following. You have to invest in strategy to change the way you create value for the company without trying to impose your ideas at all costs. You have to invest in communication to change your personal brand, and that way people around you will realize, they will really understand who you are and what are your intentions. Sometimes you may not even have the profile of a rebel. Maybe you're just in the wrong company. There's a phrase that I really like, which says, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're simply in the wrong room. If all your colleagues are slow, apathetic, reactive, if your boss knows less than you, if nobody is interested to hear your ideas, well, perhaps it's time for you to switch businesses. Otherwise, you might also have the risk to become slow and reactive. These people will slow you down. You need to be within the appropriate environment to allow yourself to develop yourself as a professional. And maybe you have to go to the path of the intrapreneur. That's profile number 3, the intrapreneur. The intrapreneur is already a step above the pawn and the rebel. The intrapreneur knows that the key to career advancement is delivering more value. What is the difference between intrapreneur and entrepreneur? It is the intra, that means within a company. You see, while the entrepreneur opens a company of their own, the intrapreneur prefers to find the right company and be in that company where they are able to practice their entrepreneurship internally. They know that the right company will provide all the necessary tools for them to develop this entrepreneur behavior. The most important thing is that they have to find the right company. Because if you are in the wrong firm, in the wrong company, the way you will be recognized within your company will hurt you more than help you. People will be saying, who this person thinks he is or she is. In a company with a corporate culture that encourages chicken-like behavior, you can pose a threat. If you stand out, well, people around you will try to discourage you. And unfortunately, some companies have a culture that lead to conformism and mediocrity. So here is a solution that you need if you are an entrepreneur. Keep that fire inside of you burning. That will make you be able to make things happen. And because you already developed a feature that it has a lot of value, use that to your benefit. There are 2 important modules on the Double Your Salary course that ask you to pay attention a lot after you enroll. The first module is about the environment. It's going to help you to be adequate in yourself and finding the right environment for you to continue being this excellent professional that you are. It will help you to make changes in your behavior, and then you can interact better with your supervisors. When you know how to optimize your environment, you really have an advantage. If you are in the wrong environment, you're basically fighting a losing battle. The other module I want you to pay attention to is module number 4, which is a sequence on 4 classes on communication. Because with proper communication, you're going to be able to cultivate networks of contacts, of supporters within your company, outside of your company, informers, advisors, and in some cases, those who are intrapreneurs. They might have the tendency to look at others with a little bit of disdain, thinking of themselves as being superior to everyone else who are the mediocre ones. Careful with that. You have to be humble. No matter how much talent you have, no matter how much grit you have, no matter how good your ideas are, if you are labeled as arrogant, you're going to end up being frowned upon and isolated. You cannot succeed on your own. This becomes even clearer when you analyze the fourth profile that we're talking about here, which is the intrapreneur. The fourth type of the professional is the intrapreneur, those who are focused on creating value for the customers. Entrepreneurs also have this fire within. They do everything to stand out and rise in their careers and be really good at what they do. Professionals who exhibit entrepreneur behavior, they are excellent at knowing exactly how to execute and implement actions. They use passion and inspiration and creativity. They criticize what is outdated. They bring innovations, and they are in the process of this continuous improvement. And to be able to do all this, the entrepreneur must be at peace within their own personality. Just imagine an employee filled with insecurities and fear. They want to move up in the career ladder, but that person will probably be paralyzed with fear before the journey even has begun. They're going to be thinking things like, but is this going to work? What will people think of me? Am I good enough? A real entrepreneur cannot let these doubts paralyze them and stop them from doing what has to be done. The entrepreneur understands what the risks are and still goes on. There's a famous quote that says that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to act despite of fear. That's the courage that characterizes the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur looks at things and asks, why does it have to be like this? Think of just some entrepreneurs that you admire. See how they have improved the whole market, the environment, and not only for themselves, but for all the companies that operate in that market. Take responsibility for your own professional growth. If you really want to stand out in the market and fly higher than everyone else and get better wages, well, you need at least to be an intrapreneur. Otherwise, you end up being just another chicken that goes to work every day, grumbling, doing as you're told, collecting some crumbs in return. Regardless of your current situation, change is possible, but for this, you need to take responsibility for your own professional growth. There is no one in the world who will be able to help you if you don't change your attitude first. I believe that you've already taken the first step in participating in our reflection. And know this was an important first step. And that was also probably a very difficult one for you to take. Usually when we talk about these professional career issues, usually people who have not yet taken responsibility for their own results have all kinds of objections and justifications. They will say things like, no, Seichi, you don't understand. In my company, it is different. In my city, my town, there's no opportunity. In my case, it is difficult. It's complicated. I would like to, but, I just can't change, and whatever. That's the state of denial. It is a way of avoiding responsibility. If I say that in my case it's different, in my company is different, my boss is complicated, that there is no way of changing, all I'm doing is refusing to take responsibility. But if I recognize that there is the possibility of change, to climb the corporate ladder, to stop behaving like chicken and becoming an ego, symbolically speaking, whose responsibility is it? In that case, it is my responsibility, no one else. That's a logical, indisputable conclusion. If there is a possibility of growing faster, rejecting the crumbs that are thrown at me and flying high, there is no one in the world to blame. I cannot blame my boss or the economic crisis or my neighbors or my luck. All responsibility is in my hands. So, this was the first key. We have to take responsibility to change our attitude, getting close to those who are performing with excellency and getting away from people who are only complaining every day. I have to be asking myself, what can I do to improve today? What can I do to generate more value in my work? And by doing this, each day that you're progressing, taking a small step in the direction that you truly desire and deserve, when you're gonna least realize, you can look back and see how far you've come. Congratulations. Going from being a common and replaceable employee to becoming a more rare and valuable professional in the market is a choice. And this choice depends on your actions. In the Double Your Salary course, we study together and in detail various different strategies to help you to make better choices for your professional career. You're going to discover how to identify opportunities, how to think like an entrepreneur, and how to get to a continuous improvement process to stand out in your market. You can go to arata.se/DYS to find out more.